Welcome one, welcome all to DeFi Crypto and Airdrops. I am Mike, aka Veteran Crypto, and this is our Monday Money Talks edition with Jeff, and hopefully Taylor will be here in a minute. But if not, we'll just keep on rolling. How's it going, brother?
That's going pretty good, man. How you doing?
Doing all right, doing all right. Had a nice weekend. Had one of my brothers coming to town. Had Jeff, the other Jeff, from California, Crypto Jeff. He came into town as well, and we just kind of hung out.
That sounds
So
good.
yeah, no, it was pretty cool. But let's jump on over to here. So real quick, if you're not watching us on YouTube, if you want to jump over there, you can join the chat, ask questions. We have our kind of our panel of experts. Jeff, he's been doing financial planning for decades now, and so he's more than happy to answer any questions that any of you have. Taylor is an estate attorney, and I'll actually show the website real quick. This is their website, WG Law at willprobateattorneys.com. That's Taylor down there in the bottom right hand corner. Been in business for quite some time. It's his law firm. So this episode that we do on Mondays is more about wealth preservation as opposed to wealth generation. It's important, of course, to be able to earn and grow your wealth. But if you don't know what you're going to do with it after you get it, then you're going to get taxed to death. It's why a lot of people that win the lottery and things like that end up broke a couple years later. They don't take into account, that they pay taxes, and they buy a huge house. There's all the upkeep on it, and the taxes, and the utilities, and just all those different things. If they buy that expensive luxury car, there's the insurance on it. There's all these things a lot of people don't think about. They just think about, I need to get rich. It's like you want to make sure that you stay rich. So anyway, that's what this episode every Monday is about. And then last but not least is me and Taylor, and I'm trying to get Jeff involved with it. I know he's a busy man, but the DeFi WIZE newsletter. It's $19.95 a month, Monday through Friday. Me and Taylor get up about 4 or 5 in the morning and put it together. It's basically a snapshot of what's going on in the markets that day in both the crypto market and traditional markets. And we give DeFi ranges on a lot of the more popular pools, trading ranges, things like that. With some tools that we use. And but it's a great way, if you're crunched on time in the morning while you're drinking your morning coffee or your morning tea. It's a 5-10 minute read and gives you, your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the markets. So pretty much everybody that's getting it in our community. It's only been out not even a month now. We got I'd say probably about 20 people that are getting it now, and all of them have been saying that it's more than paid for itself each month. Just in the information that it gives, and like the ranges for the DeFi pools. So with that, let's go ahead and just jump on over to here. And how about you tell me what you're seeing in the markets, the traditional markets right now, Jeff?
It's been kind of a weird. I mean, it's not weird. It's just sort of like everything's just kind of feels like it's on pause a little bit. You had let's see, let's look at the last month, for example. So the last month we had this. We went from like literally a month ago we were at 68.50. We went all the way down on the S&P to 65.30, just to come back to 68.50. We've literally gone nowhere in just a couple days shy of a month. Nvidia did earnings and they blew out after market, and then by the next day it sold back off. I don't know, man. I'm not sure. I haven't seen a whole lot of the markets are just kind of just chilling. Well, the rest of the data keeps getting worse for the most part, right? Employment data. Oh, actually, we canceled. The Trump administration canceled the last employment report, so we just didn't see it. But we do get, there's private payroll like ADP and others that release information, and that was no bueno. Matter of fact, I think we lost, instead of adding like whatever 30 or 50,000 jobs last month, we lost like 100,000. So there's, people are on payroll. excuse me, they're on unemployment longer. They're not finding jobs at the same rates. There's a lot of things that are be concerned about. But I mean, I feel like I'm a broken record. It's all I talk about on this podcast is the things to be concerned about. But reality is week to week things move slowly. But it is um, the pressures are increasing, right? So and we certainly have um, a disconnect between Main Street and Wall Street. It happens a lot, but it's certainly been exacerbated this year. I think I might have mentioned this on one of our last podcasts, but I saw that like some really high percentage, like 80% of the S&P 500 stocks are like 20% below their highs for the year. But because the big seven, right, the magnificent seven are so massive, they are still pulling it all up, right? So I think one of the things that makes me uncomfortable as a financial planner is what you want to see is what they call breadth. You want to see lots of companies from lots of industries are continuing to increase in value because they're continuing to grow their profits, they're continuing to grow their earnings, they're continuing to expand, right? And that's not what we see. Like, so I guess a better way to think about it as far as like the health of the overall markets that are then a reflection of the economy
Hmm.
is if you put if you had two rooms, right, and in room one you had Bezos and Gates and Elon and Larry Ellison. You had all these multi billionaires, and then you go, okay, well, what's the average worth of the people in that room? Well, they're multi billionaires. But then if Larry Ellison goes home, right, I don't know, goes and jumps out of a plane or whatever crazy crap he does, right? If he leaves, the average wealth of the room is still multi billionaires.
Hmm.
Whereas if you, me, Taylor, and Elon Musk got in a room,
And he leaves the room.
it's multi-billionaires.
Yeah.
But if Elon leaves, we're back to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so my concern is that's what's happened in the marketplace, right? You've got um you've got a scenario
Well, I know
where
Warren Buffett, like, is he still all in cash?
yeah, he's very in cash, right? Which is concerning, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the
No,
guy's
one of the best investors
94,
in
95 years
history
old.
is
He's a
all in
genius.
cash. What does that tell you?
I saw Stan say, "When will the $2,000 check hit our mailbox?" I'm going to tell you, don't count on it.
Do not hold your breath.
So we've received. So let's see. We've received. I don't know how many households it would be. Like how many that would be, but let's say for grins, it was 80% of the households in the United States. And there's about I don't know how many households there are, but I'm going to ask chat real quick. See how many households in US are 100K or under. Because I think the total amount of tariff money we've received so far is like 185 billion,
Mm.
right? So, all right, let's see here. 57%. So about 77 million households.
So 77 million times 2,000.
77 million. Let's do that real quick.
Well, that'd be like
Times
what, 140 million?
2,000. That's
100.
$154 billion.
Oh
So
yeah.
if we were to do what he said, he'd be sending the vast majority of the tariff revenue out the door, which
Yeah.
at the same time is supposed to pay down our national debt, and at the same time is supposed to make us not have to have the IRS.
Yeah.
It's like pick a goal, man.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's, not enough butter for the size of the toast. It's you're spreading it too thin. So I guess my question is I mean, there's definitely a lot of bearish kind of sentiment out there. I know that quantitative easing was supposed to start. I know a lot of that money is still sitting in the account and it hasn't deployed. I mean, do you think that that's going to be enough to break these markets free? Because I mean, the traditional market, it seems like it's pretty stagnant. It's trending sideways, like you mentioned. I know the crypto market is doing the same. I mean, it's been down and to the right for a while, and now is kind of seems like it's trending sideways a bit.
Hmm.
But which is great for my DeFi. My DeFi pools are all in range and earning. So I'm earning free Bitcoin and free Ethereum and free Aerodrome, and which is great because that new Aerodrome platform launches Q2 of next year. And so yeah, I mean, I've just been stacking the shit out of that.
That's
And then
great.
we got all kinds of other bullish news on base. We have here, let's pump over to this real quick. Share that tab. So over here on X, we got there is a new bridge from base between base and Solana, which and it's secured by Chainlink. So three very bullish projects, two of which have a token currently. Base is talking about launching a token, but that being said, I see this being more bullish for Base. That Solana is bridging its tokens, its assets, over to Base Network, which of course is bullish for Aerodrome because now there's Solana liquidity pools and Solana chain liquidity pools, for other tokens on Aerodrome. I don't see that going the other direction. Correct me if I'm wrong, chat. But of course, I'm very focused on base. I'll have to go and check that out. But this is what I keep talking about is that why I'm so bullish on Ethereum, as far as DeFi and RWAs, base, as far as DeFi and RWAs, um, and a lot of these other projects that we're bullish on this channel, is for this reason. I mean, have you been diving any deeper into DeFi or crypto, Jeff?
Well, so I did get on Uniswap, and I'm doing my first. I think it's a Bitcoin USDC liquidity pool,
Okay.
and that's been interesting. Of course, I picked it. I think we started it before. I think Bitcoin was like between like one was going like between like 112 and like 107, and then it just and then I have to reset my. So I kept rebalancing down.
Oh, gotcha. So,
Um,
so you did a ranged pool.
right, arranged pool,
See,
but
you didn't watch episode 8 in my DeFi Academy where I tell everybody that's new to do full range pools, lending and staking because it's very beginner friendly and you don't have to worry about the rebalancing aspect and stuff like that. So
so what
you're
does
just
that do? So I assume the full range pools pay a significantly lower APY.
yes, you're not going to earn as much for sure. Some of them, however, Aerodrome, like the Aerodrome USDC full range pool that I'm in, I earn roughly 30% APR. So yeah, and it's all it's doing is just stacking more arrow for me because I'm trying to build that bag as large as possible. But it really just depends. But for the most part, yes, you would be correct.
Interesting. So well, you know what I feel like my role on here is to let you tell people don't be like Jeff. Like watch episode 8. I did see something. I do want to. I want to share my screen with you, or you can let me
Yeah. Go
do
ahead,
this
pop it
because
up.
you mentioned Buffett, and I saw this just the other day, and I thought it was interesting.
Not Jimmy Buffett.
Not Jimmy Buffett. Um, so let's see here. Um, how do I do this here?
Just
Do I just hit
just,
share?
just the usual share screen.
There we go. So this is a bit troubling. So you see this? It says you have to be wildly optimistic to believe that corporate profits as a percent of GDP can, for any sustained period, hold much above 6%. And that's Warren Buffett in 1999. And this line it goes all the way back to, I don't know, probably looks like there's 50. It probably is like 1950 something. And you'll note we had the screaming up right here. If you can see my mouse, I don't know if you can on this thing, but we have
Yeah.
the screaming uptick and then the correction of '08, and then it shot right back. I mean, maybe he's wrong. Maybe this is the new reality, but we're still at, I mean, if you look at any of this, so let's just say this represents 60, 70 years, right? At least, because 60 years is right here. So let's call it 80 years. If you look at this, we're at 11% profit margins, right? The absolute peak was like 13. there, that's nowhere else on the chart. So the question is how long it, if the fair market value is assuming this level of percentage profit growth, how long is that sustainable? I don't know, right? I mean, we may be, the optimistic argument would be we're in another new era. The pessimistic argument is even if it goes back down to, let's say, 9%, we're going to see a significant correction in the markets to properly compensate market price for the new earnings reality, right? So I don't know. I think that's something certainly to watch, though, right? Because at some point, it's going to matter that we are at '08 levels on delinquency for credit cards, auto loans, and housing. At some point, that matters, right? I saw another thing that said
Oh yeah, repos too.
something like 47% of households making 300 grand are paycheck to paycheck.
I saw something interesting. It used to be it was like 34,000 a year was considered the poverty level. And recently, I guess they updated it, and it's like 120 something thousand
Yeah,
dollars.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I actually follow the guy. His name's Mike Green. He's a hedge fund manager. Uh,
That is
and
insane.
what he did is he did this white paper and released it. He went back and he said, okay, when they first came up with this poverty line concept,
Yeah, I mean, what was the cost of living?
right? If we because there's all these adjustments that have made along the way.
Mm,
And so it said if we calculate based on the original formula, you need about 120 grand as a family of four, 110 grand as a family of four, not like 42 or whatever it is. Right? So very now again, some of that is trying to account for the world we live in now. So for example, has anybody ever tried to recently do anything without a cell phone? I don't mean from a convenience perspective. I mean log into anything, right? You get your second factor, and I know this because I got a buddy of mine that went through a pretty rough spell and took a little detour to jail for a hot minute. And I was trying to take care of some things for him while he was in there,
yeah.
and his cell phone got shut off because he wasn't paying for his cell phone. But everything that I needed to do to help with the finances, they were sending the authentication text to a cell phone that was turned off.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're literally, and they're like, oh, if you need to, I mean, like, it was literally like this catch 22.
Oh,
And
dude,
so,
I
oh,
ran into it with
he,
my Coinbase account. I was somewhat new to crypto. I went and got a new phone and didn't it just didn't even cross my mind. It's something I hadn't dealt with before. And, I had them clone my phone, like they do. They plug it in and, it moves all your photos and, all your apps and all that stuff. And I was thinking that was going to be good. And went to go try to log in to my Coinbase app and nothing because it was saying, basically that, this isn't your phone. And it took forever. It took weeks of me going back and forth with Coinbase support, trying to figure out how the hell to get into my account.
oh, I just because you mentioned it, I'm like, oh yeah, Uniswap. Because I just got I finally gave up the ghost on my old laptop that I'd squeezed every last. When it gets to the point where it turns on for like 3 minutes before it actually shows you anything on the screen, it's time.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, if this doesn't turn on one day, I'm going to be in trouble. So I went ahead and splurged and got a quality laptop, right? We set up everything over the weekend or last
Yeah.
weekend. Just clicked on my Uniswap icon. It wants me to put in my recovery phrase.
Yeah. No,
And I'm
that's
like,
why it's so important that you write those down.
I've got it saved. I do know
Yeah,
where it is.
I got
Um,
a little black book, it doesn't have girls' phone numbers in it. It has nothing but a bunch of seed phrases.
but my point is simply that even though it would have sounded ridiculous even 10 or 15 years ago, but a cell phone is really no longer that's not a luxury or optional item to work in today's world, right?
No,
To live in today's world.
it's your
And so,
banking,
he
it's your
calculated some of
communication,
the
it's everything.
right. So my point being is he put some of that stuff in there, right? And yeah, the result was like 110 grand. And he's like, so we're basically lying to people. We're telling people poverty line's like 40,000. The median income for a family of four is like 80. What's your problem? Well, what's your problem is after taxes and your health insurance and a few other things, you've got
inflation and
nothing left. You
yeah.
just don't. And so what's really scary about that is how do you reconcile that with the markets? Well, you reconcile with the markets that the top 10%, particularly the top 5%, the top 10% own 83% of the stocks in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
But the other thing is they're spending like crazy in general. Like they're going to sporting events and concerts and
Oh,
traveling.
well,
And
they're
like
buying the shit out of
it's
crypto.
shifting into this so basically, I think even though I'm really concerned about a lot of things we see, and I think it will eventually crack. The short term answer is as long as the wealthy are doing okay, then the markets will do okay, and that's a pretty and I'm not sure how you handicap that, right? I'm not sure what's the signal when they're not, right? What do you track to try to get a heads up to figure out when you need to get a little more defensive?
Well, I mean, that's the beauty of crypto, and I was talking about it in the chat today on Discover Crypto and Blockchain Basement. I wish they would have, put my comment up, but it's in a window right now with crypto where it's transparent what the wealthy are doing. In
Right.
crypto
Now you can
anyway.
see.
I mean, you can look on the on chain data, and you can see what they're buying. I mean, they're buying a lot of the stuff that I'm buying because I'm buying what I see them buying. Chainlink, Ethereum, Bitcoin, stuff like that. Because they know, they all go to the same country clubs and they sit in the same rooms and they share information and they know what is being used to make this new financial system. The new hybrid, DeFi, TradFi financial system. And there are a lot of projects that are coming out. One that we're bullish on, Canton Network. It is the largest RWA play. Came out of nowhere. It launched and buried Ethereum. It has like $400 billion of TVL right out the gate. And the
Wow.
reason being is that the industry that is building on it, it has a privacy layer, and it allows institutions to be siloed. So it's not like everything is on the chain visible to everybody, everything that happens. They don't want that. They want privacy. Wells Fargo doesn't want, God and everybody and, their competition like JP Morgan Chase to see what's going on chain. So these privacy, projects are going to be a huge part of the future of, the financial markets. So
It's funny you mentioned that because I mean that's definitely the purists that really started this. That was the antithesis to what they were trying to achieve. But I
exactly.
do think if you want mass adoption, people don't want their. I mean, heck, I don't want people on Venmo seeing you know what I mean? Like that's just weird. I get the value from a societal standpoint for the audit, the transparency, the security of this transaction actually happened. But I do think if you can marry that with some basic privacy protections, um, I do think that's a lot more appealing to a lot of people. I also, I was looking at uh, Ricky on the comments made a thing about budgeting, and I get that, and I'm not knocking personal responsibility or budgeting, but look, the average car now in America that's listed for sale is
It's a double-edged sword. There are people that are spending outside of their means, but at the same time, the cost of living is going up, like rent. It's not that people are getting places that necessarily they can't afford. It's just the cheapest apartments that you can find are a lot more expensive than they used to be.
So I saw an interesting thing about this. So I actually did some research over the weekend, since this is kind of leading us into this about how do you compare, because based on the Mike Green thing, and I'm like, let me see if I can pull it up in chat real quick. Um, but I was asking, so there's something called hedonic adjustment. Ever heard of this?
I have not.
So the idea is, excuse me, let me pull this up. Give me about, let's see here.
You just on the top, it should
There we
say
go.
share this screen instead or something
Well,
like
it's a whole long thing. I was just trying to. So I was asking about, how do we compare, like what, because you hear things like, well, in 1960, a person working on the line in GE could pay for a house and his wife could stay home, and they had a car, and they could go on one vacation a year, kind of thing.
Well, I
How
mean,
do
a
you
car was like, a nice car was 3 grand. A house was like 25 grand,
correct? And so, but and also a house was 1,200 square feet,
Yeah.
maybe, right? Like so. So the question becomes, and so this was really insightful when I'm going through this big iterative thing, and so at the end, and chat actually said something I thought was really interesting, and it said the final answer is, let's see here, is quality has soared, but the minimum buy-in cost for basic participation in society has exploded, and wages didn't keep pace. So in 1975, an apartment was worse, but a cheap apartment was much worse than an apartment you get now, generally
Yeah.
speaking. But it existed. A cheap car was worse, but it existed. Because now with a lot of it's regulations, right? And I mean, in demand. So now the cheapest cars have anti-lock brakes and all the airbags and
Yeah, yeah,
all
yeah.
that backup. Every single car is mandated to have a backup camera since like 2016, and I think those are all good things, but they all add to the cost, right? So
Mhm.
and it makes it a lot more expensive to repair when things break. Because my first car, if you did a fender bender with me and hit my bumper, you know what was messed up? My bumper.
Yeah.
It. Now it's your all these different sensors for your airbags and for your
Oh, and if any one of them
thing
doesn't
that
work,
auto
it like your car
follows. And
doesn't start, and
yeah,
yeah.
you got computers. All of a sudden, a new freaking bumper is like $3,000, right? So here's my point, and what I really was kind of interested to see is it talks about the rungs to one of the biggest things about the American dream was this idea that in a generation or two you could go up a rung or two or three on the ladder, right?
Mm.
You really could. You had that upward mobility.
Yeah, yeah.
And now the argument is that the bottom rung or two is simply missing. It's for a variety of reasons. Nobody wants to build an apartment complex and rent them out for $600 a month, because you can rent them out for $2,000 a month to someone. And so because of that, you've made it very difficult to make that initial leap, right? To get traction. This is why you see college graduates, and they're working at Starbucks, or they're driving Ubers because they can't get a job in a field that is enough.
Well, real quick, this is a valid point, and this is something I've talked about often. In the current generations, you bought stuff like a fridge or a TV or an appliance or something like that, and it lasted for pretty much forever. And if something broke, you could get it repaired for relatively cheap. Nowadays, everything is just throw it out and replace it.
Yeah, that's right.
So
But in some ways, though, like a TV is much, much cheaper than it used to be, right? Even though
that,
if you right, so
yeah.
some things have gotten much less expensive, but other things have just gone through they've 10x'd in cost when inflation should have been 3x or 4x, right? Like cars.
Oh
And
yeah,
so
like an entry level car is what more than a house used to be.
yeah, it's nuts. And so it's a very challenging. There's like this, at the end of the day, the people think it's like this. I'm not saying there's not collusion or who and kind of some classist stuff going on as far as the rich get richer. But the main reason why the rich get rich, I mean, I'm a foodie. You know this about me.
Oh yeah. Well,
But I
just so
still
people
can
know,
only eat
Jeff
so
will
much
send me
a
like
day.
little mini videos of like him, like eating shakes and stuff like that.
Hey
Like,
man, don't knock shakes. Shakes are one of the best things God ever created. I had a salted caramel shake the other day, blow your mind. But my point is, my point is simply that I can't have 20 shakes a day, right? As much as I've tried.
I was gonna say, I think you
Not,
might
I
have
mean, if
tried.
anybody's tried, I've tried. But so when you get to a certain level of wealth and you got your housing covered, you got your transportation covered, you got your entertainment covered, you got your daycare, like all of a sudden you have that freedom to reinvest that capital. And it's just that we've moved for better, I mean, probably for worse, but it is what it is. We've moved that line so much higher. So my sister has a 2-year-old or
Yeah.
3-year-old. Now, granted, my sister's a little bougie, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So she's not going to just put her in like any old daycare, but her daycare school is like $1,700 a month.
Holy shit.
Now she lives in downtown Houston. right? So she's
Yeah.
got to have something that's within a relatively that's within 15 minutes of the house or
Yeah.
something, and is by her work. And so when I heard that, I did the same exact thing. Well, then she's like, okay, and so she starts pulling it up, and she's like, we won't take quality into account at all. Like the cheapest daycare was like 1,200.
So it
So what do
wasn't
you
a
do if you
whole
got
lot
two
more.
or three kids under
Oh,
5?
no, I mean, I'm glad I never had kids because I mean, well, honestly, I couldn't be retired. I
Oh
mean,
no, it's
I do all right for myself, but with my
but my
retirement,
point is you take so let's take that. So what is a big thing Elon talks about all the time? What's the
it's
number one
having
problem
kids.
he thinks we're facing?
Yeah,
Population
it's that
collapse,
the
right?
population shrinking and yeah,
Okay, so now let's say you take the average household, and let's just say let's say we're doing whatever. Let's say you got a family making 120 grand a year, but let's split it even. Let's say the wife and the husband are both making 60, right?
okay,
After taxes, she's bringing home 40. They decide they want to have two kids within a relatively close range of one another. Maybe they want a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, right? Like a lot of us, like every other generation used to do,
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of knock out all the diapers at once, kind of do all of the stuff and the different seasons of life.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You have to have a really serious conversation about which one of us wants to quit our job
Because
because it's going
it's
to take
cheaper.
3/4 of what you're making to put them in daycare. So
Yeah,
now you're working for minimum wage.
yeah.
I mean, I don't blame. On the flip side, I'm not saying
Well,
it's necessarily a good idea to pay
I'll
people to
tell
have
you a
babies.
life hack
But
a lot of people are doing though is, I know that my family did it. My, mom and dad, they, moved in, with my sister and her husband and, the grandkids. I mean, my mom's Cuban, so, she, it's a dream come true for her, but
right,
she
family, right?
yeah, she takes care of the kids, and so it, saves them that money and it allows my sister to, keep teaching and, allow her husband to do her job, and my dad hides in his office all day 'cause he doesn't wanna deal with kids, but it works out.
It works out, and multi-generational living is how it's done almost everywhere else in the world. But here's the problem, and I'm not trying to like crap on the young ones, right? I'm
Well,
49,
they
but
stick their parents in old folks'
do
homes
they
that
do
cost them
they
a bunch of
want
money.
if you go, so let's just say you go back to that same couple, that 120,000, you're like, hey, you're making enough money, you put money in your 401k, at least
Yeah,
to the match.
yeah,
You
yeah,
can live in a nice apartment or maybe a starter home. You have cars you want to drive for the most part. And then your friends call you up on Friday night, want to go to dinner, you can. Or you can have kids and none of that gets to happen anymore. And
yep,
you're trying to tell 20 something year olds and 30 something year olds that they need to do this, and the problem is we're really spoiled. We
yeah,
don't want to. It's not like now, whereas I don't even know, I'm going to make this up, but when I was a kid, we hardly ever went out to eat. I'm sure my dad remembers when he was a kid, like he's born 1950, you went out to eat like twice a year.
yeah,
All your time was spent with family and extended family, and everybody's cooking. And it was just a completely different lifestyle and community. And we don't have that anymore. So
yep,
we've built a lifestyle that's based on consumption, right? Going to
yep,
Starbucks, going to grab a bite to eat over here, going to go out
yep,
tonight, go to the club, whatever it is. And that does not lend to family formation or long term financial security.
no. Well,
And I
and
have no idea.
there's a lot of cultures where, like, all the siblings, like adult siblings will all like, especially Middle Eastern families, they'll all live in the same house. Mexican, Spanish families. There's multiple families. All brothers and sisters, and kids and aunts and uncles, and abuela and freaking abuelo, and everybody. They all live in the same house, and they help watch each other's kids. They share finances because they're paying one mortgage. They have multiple cars. It's just there's so much to be had from that.
And I think there's a lot there to be envious of, right?
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways that's a wonderful thing. Now, me personally, I don't want to lose my parents or my sister.
But it
I think
costs
that's
you.
the challenge, right? Is that
But
that's
it
the
costs
norm
you.
for those cultures. It's not the norm for us. And so we've chosen like the most expensive path.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable. To quote Ricky, we are so fucked.
Yeah.
So anyway, moving on. What else we were talking about today?
Well, you know what? Let's dip into just kind of, like I said, I really want to touch on that. Everybody keeps talking about quantitative easing and about how the markets are about to get flooded with liquidity, and that's the narrative going on in crypto right now. I know.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot based upon Powell stepping down in May, and
Mhm.
they think Trump's going to put in basically a what they call a dovish I think it's really problematic, right? And this is not an anti-Trump thing. This is just I don't care who the president is. You don't want the Federal Reserve to be seen to be very non-independent, right?
Yeah.
And the reason for that is if you want outside sovereign nations and massive corporations to invest and buy your debt, they want some kind of idea of consistency. They want some idea that like it's you're not going to do something crazy. Well, if we make the Federal Reserve a lot less independent, maybe not legally, but like politically speaking, then everybody's going to go, well, depending upon who's in office, be it Trump or back in the day Biden or whoever's next,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever their flavor, whatever their whims are, as far as how is what's going to get reflected in the policy of the Federal Reserve, that makes it a much more volatile, much more unpredictable thing, and that's
That's
not necessarily good for us. I don't know. My suspicion is that quantitative easing this time around will not work as well as the last go, as far as assets are concerned. And
Yeah.
here's why: I think that the marginal buyer of U.S. Treasuries, which are nation states, right? They're
Yeah.
sovereign wealth funds, are looking at our dollar going, wait a minute. So let's just for a second pretend we're Japan
Yeah.
or whoever. So I got to take my currency, I got to exchange it for your dollars, then I got to buy your debt that you're going to pay back to me in dollars that I then, besides either keep them as reserve currency just because it's reserve currency in the world, which a lot of them do. But if I want to use it in my economy otherwise, I can either keep it in the bank as reserves or I can buy oil with it. But besides that, if I want to actually use it, I need to convert back to my currency. Okay.
Mhm.
Well, in the last year, if you literally a year ago, if you did that from basically anybody else in the world that's a major currency, whether it's the euro, whether it's the yen or the ruble, whatever. Well, the ruble's different. But if you did it from any major economy, you lost 12% just on the trip,
Yeah.
regardless of what the rates are. So if I'm like, wait a minute, you guys are not, you're spending
I-
money on like
I'm like
nobody
winning
else.
4 or 5%, but I'm losing 12 or 14%.
Exactly. You had Doge come in and then you basically shut them down. We're not so. My point being is my macro thesis is I'm going to go. I don't really want you to pay me less than you're paying me right now to hold your debt,
Hmm.
which is what quantitative easing would do, right? Because that's when the Federal Reserve steps in and buys bonds just in mass by printing money that lowers the amount of interest insurance the government has to pay because the Fed's a buyer at any price. They're basically like, look, we don't care if you want to pay us 1% for 20 years. We'll still take it, right?
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
the rest of the markets aren't like that. And so I think they're going to have a hard time getting that to work because I don't think these other folks are going to be okay with that.
I
We'll have
heard
to see.
I heard
You think it
somebody
needs
say
a
that
dollar
they were going to that's
and
what
then
they were
we
going
have
to
a
use
lot
a
more
bunch of that liquidity that's in that fund for, was to basically buy buy our own debt.
Right, and that's what that's what it is. I mean, the QE is just buying our own debt, and that's fine. But you unless you're going to buy all of it, you have to have other people coming along with you,
Yeah.
right? And so, I mean, it'd be like if you and me wanted to go buy a plot of land to build another cabin, and I'm like, I will spend, I don't care what the list price is, and you're like,
Yeah.
yeah, but I'm still in for half, and I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, then the sale's not happening, right?
Yeah.
Because you've got a limit. So we're gonna have to see on that, but we really won't know until Mayish sometime. I mean, they may cut some more rates. We'll see. I think what's going to happen is if they cut rates too aggressively, we're gonna see inflation just spike even harder,
Yeah.
which is going to be a real big problem politically come next October or November.
Because
So
that's midterms, right?
right, midterms
Yeah.
exactly. And I
And
think that's why you're
that's going to
starting to
be
see.
that's going to be a huge indication on potentially, if how that goes, of how the presidential election, the general election is going to go.
Well, I mean, I think there's a world where, I mean, if Democrats get enough control, they'll just turn around and try to impeach Trump immediately for something, right? And
Mm.
which, by the way, I mean, well, on a personal level, I think there's some things that are impeach worthy, but in general, I think that's a terrible thing, because what ends up happening, if you look back for a while now, like, everybody's trying to. I mean, it seems like we're starting to get to the point where all you do, if you're not in power, is try to get enough majority to impeach the guy in power. That's not how it's supposed to work, right? I mean, if something's done uber egregiously, that's one thing, but just we're using it almost like a policy cudgel. Like, you're not doing it once, we got enough of us, so we're just going to. And even if nothing happens, we're going to have investigations, and we're going to drag everything down into the mud, and we're not going to have any. So I'm concerned about that, right? I think that's not a good thing, just to set as a precedence, regardless of any given. Impeachment should be a very, very, very rare threat, and ever since Clinton, it hasn't been. I mean, they talked about. I don't know if they didn't do it, but there was calls to impeach Bush over like the WMDs and also. I mean, like, there's call, and maybe that should have happened. I don't know, but I'm just saying that the easier you make it, it's kind of like you've read about couples that will say, like, we don't say the word divorce in our house because they don't want to normalize the concept in any way, shape, or form,
Yeah.
right? And I think we've gotten to the point where we are so politically divided that it's problematic. So I think it's going to be a really big election. I think right now, I think the Democrats have a significant leg up, probably, just because they're not the ones in power, and so they're not the ones getting directly blamed for most of these things. Now it depends, right? It depends on who you're talking to and what, like. But I mean, if you think about after the Charlie Kirk tragedy, right? Everybody's we are all Charlie Kirk, and there was a lot of people that I follow that were acting like that was going to be this threshold moment where the whole world's, all of America is going to come over to the conservative side and have their eyes opened and so on and so forth. And the reality is, I mean, what, 6 weeks later, Mandami's elected in New York.
Yeah.
And he's an absolute socialist.
Yeah.
So, and then you also have, I saw a poll, something like 30% of MAGA identifying 35-year-olds or less hold significant socialist positions. Matter of fact, someone was asking, right, the very first question, when's the $2,000 get here? And that's a socialist position.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't mean, I'm not saying it's evil or wrong necessarily. I wouldn't mind $2,000.
But yeah, no, I just, wanting the government to be constantly, being our parents, giving us basically what they stole from us back.
Right, exactly. And then we invested in, our nation now owns what, 1/10 of Intel? We own a 10, like these are things that would have had the generation prior, like the Reaganites or whatever you call them. They would have been like, what are you doing? Right? That's the antithesis of what at least the conservative movement used to stand for. Now, I do think, quite frankly, somebody mentioned about UBI earlier in the chat. I think we're going to have to eventually move towards UBI at some level at some point if we don't rectify this massive wealth disparity. And the problem is, and when you think about it, guys, think of a game of, everybody's played the game of Monopoly, right? And you get to that point in the game where that one maybe it's you, maybe it's your buddy, but someone they hit enough of the right rolls and missed enough of the wrong rolls, and they got all the money and they got all the houses, and that you're going to spend the next damn hour and a half playing the stupid game, but the outcome is
already,
it's all going to that person.
And honestly, I kind of think that we're already there. And I kind of think that, UBI is inevitable, because it's going to get to a point, I mean, and it's accelerating to where people aren't going to be able to survive. I mean, like you were talking about at the very beginning, you got, credit card debt is at an all-time high. You got repos at an all-time high. People can't afford, a place to live. I mean, there's a lot of people that live in their cars. When I drove down to, when I traded my truck in, I drove down to California because, my brother owns a couple dealerships down there. And I was, driving through the hills, the mountains, above the city, as I was driving down, in every little place that people could park, there was people that it was obvious they were parked, and they had, like, the towels in the windows where you roll it up so that they could have some privacy in there. And there's a bunch of people that had jobs. I mean, they weren't homeless. They had jobs, but they just couldn't afford a place to live in Southern California.
Right.
So
It's
if
crazy.
if they don't come up with a UBI, it's the only thing that keeps a society stable and that keeps it from revolting is comfort. And
Right.
that's
That's why we're not Somalia, right? People are comfortable.
exactly. As soon as it gets to a point to where people feel like it's more uncomfortable to exist in the country than it is to revolt and hope for a better future, that's when it flips.
And we
You know?
already have UBI in a sense. It's called
Yeah.
Social Security, right? And so, like,
Well,
we just
and
added a
welfare,
certain age, but
and welfare.
well, and welfare, but Social Security. I mean, 40. I read somewhere. I mean, my math might be a little bit off, but it's like 46% of all Social Security recipients, that is their only income.
Yeah.
And then we get, I'll get in these arguments on Twitter instead of doing something productive, where people are like, well, they need, you know what, save, like kind of the pull your bootstraps up, save and invest. They should have prepared for the. Of course they should have. Right now, I don't know what some people's circumstances are really difficult. Some people's don't ever. If you're a single preschool assistant teacher, you probably never have a chance to save for the future. But in general, absolutely, that you can make those sort of morality judgments all day long, but that doesn't change reality, right? And for that matter, I mean, no, who doesn't know that we should eat right, like eat less, move more?
Yeah.
Right? That's it, right? But we're the fattest nation on the planet. So, just knowing that the cognitive dissonance between what we know we should do and what we want to do on an individual level, when you take that across the country, gets us to a point where the vast majority of people are like, man, I'm barely making it now. Next year's the year I start saving. And it's like quitting, right? Because I mean, I'm not a smoker, but I think if I were, it'd be really difficult to quit because, quite frankly, it's not the one cigarette that's going to kill you, right? It's the fact that you say just one more 50,000 times over 30 years that kills you.
Yeah.
And we're doing that financially, and it's problematic because someone's like, well, this is not my problem. And I'm like, it will be your problem if they carjack you. Because you know what people don't do? They don't go quietly into the night and be like, well, I don't have enough money. I'm 27 or I'm 42 or I'm 68 and I don't have enough money to really pay my bills. So I'll just go starve in the corner and die.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
That's
not everybody's like a monk
what
that's
we're
going to
talking about.
self-immolate themselves right out of some kind of higher calling. Like, this is the reality is, if you want to live in a nice society, somehow they have to be provided for, right, wrong, or indifferent.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm getting, kind of what I was getting at before is, there's that tipping point where, people's discomfort becomes so much that they're like, enough of this. Let them eat cake. If you look throughout history, it's the same thing. It's just people get to a point to where they're uncomfortable enough that kind of gilded cage, they realize that they're in a cage. It's not as gilded anymore. It's not as comfortable anymore. And they realize, you know what? The only way that we're going to change this, it's not from voting. It's not from doing, all the, the traditional things to try to fix things. It's we need a reset. And I'm definitely not saying that I want that or support that, but if the government doesn't fix this stuff, that's the direction we're moving in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, now what I think will be and it's kind of shameful because, right, because the people in our country that do the real jobs, right, like, the welders and the plumbers and the factory line workers and, the FedEx delivery guys and all that stuff, right? The people that bust their ass and at least part of their job is physical, that for at least two or three generations, probably two generations, we've been conditioned and raised to be like, well, yeah, I mean, your dad worked really hard and he was a senior lineman, or like a lineman, like the guy that fixes the power, right?
Yeah, the lineman, yeah.
But we did this thing somehow culturally where we, I think, quite frankly, kind of shit on those jobs. even though sometimes you're making 100 grand a year or whatever, like you're providing for your
Yeah,
family.
you were like looked down on, for doing.
We made it like less than, which is really crappy,
Yeah,
especially because like, you know what people don't think, like we had an ice storm come through in Texas that did kick the shit out of us because we aren't ready for ice storms.
yeah,
And
your
it was
power
like
grid
five,
sucks.
6 days of freezing, $200 billion of damage, $200 billion across the state. Like 300, 400 people died because they frozen. I mean, that was bad. But what no one was saying is like, I really wish the power was on so I could talk to a web designer or so I could, talk to my funny. No, people wanted power guys. They wanted food, like they wanted like the real stuff. And
Yeah,
so I think what we've done is we pushed knowledge work since I don't know, since I was a kid at least, right? You're going to go to college kind of thing. Pushed
yeah,
knowledge work. And now we're in a world where it's possible that knowledge work is going to become commoditized, at least to some degree. I mean, I was talking to Taylor the other day. He's like, he's thinking about like a year ago. He's like, he was thinking about hiring a paralegal. Now he's like, I don't need to. I just put it in chat. He's
yeah.
like, I got to double check it, right? I got to cross reference it, but he can do it so quickly,
Mhm.
and it's $200 a month.
Yeah,
So what I think is going to happen is the UBI is going to happen when the bougie upper middle class making 100 to 300,000 a year in their jobs start being unemployed in significant numbers,
mhm.
but they have just enough power and just enough political connections and just where they can rattle like this is like I guess what I'm getting at is when there was blue collar recessions, you really cared if you were a blue collar worker, and the rest of us just sort of didn't really think about it. In the same way that when you were serving our country in different countries around the world, we were at war for 20 years, but I wasn't at war.
And most people, yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like
other
I go
than
get
the
my
news,
Starbucks.
they had no clue.
Yeah, you'd see something about an IED taking out a Humvee, and you're like, oh, that's sad. And then like, it was not the same kind of at war versus when in World War II, there
Mhm.
was 400,000 Americans killed over 5 years, and
Well,
every
I mean,
single community was touched by it.
you had stay-at-home moms, back in the day that were going to work in factories,
Rosie the Riveter, right?
Well, you had refrigerator factories that got, revamped to make tanks and, airplanes. And I mean, it was, everybody was part of the war effort. So yeah, it impacted, both, domestic and abroad. But
And
yeah,
I guess what I'm getting at is we, the sad comment I'm trying to make is this: when the six-figure white collar earner can't, when that employment really spikes,
yeah.
like it did in '08, if we see that again and
Mhm.
it's sticky, that's when our country will take notice. What do you mean? My son went to law school. What do you mean he can't find a job? My daughter has a master's degree. What do you mean she can't find a job? Whether or not they should be able to, right? I mean, I think that's when we're going to finally see some real push on the UBI front and some other things, which again is embarrassing that it'll take.
That's that's a massive narrative right now. All of these people that were told, like you mentioned, I know when I was growing up, the secret to success was you somehow found a way to go to college, get a degree, and you were guaranteed the American dream.
Right.
And a lot of people I know went out there and did that, and they've done really well for themselves. But these kind of more recent people, they've were just given student loans for whatever degree. And, a lot of them are, good professional degrees, but some of them are like gender studies, and stuff like that. And it's
Oh
like,
yeah.
unless you're going to teach that to somebody else, unless you're going to get a professor's job, teaching that, there is no job for that,
Well,
so
I
you're
have
just going to
one
debt
more
for
thing
fifty
on
thousand,
this.
$100,000 for a degree that can't even pay for itself, let
I,
alone, pay your cost of living. So
First of all, I don't know who Bill is, but I like Bill. Look at his comment. I mean,
a great
he's on
conversation.
the pulse right there. So, one more comment about this, and I'm curious for anybody to tell me the answer to this because I can't get past it. Which is, if you think Adam Smith era, right, the father of modern economics in the 1700s, or even like even through to very recently, like our grandparents, right? They're raised in a small, most of them were raised in smaller towns or smaller communities, right?
Mm.
And certainly our grandparents, 100%, right? You had a couple of major cities, but that was it. You were in your little village, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
If you needed shoes, or you needed or horseshoes, even like if you needed a blacksmith services or a cobbler services or a tailor services, there had to be one either in your town or like the next town over to take care of your community.
Yeah.
But nobody is coming to, I don't know, Springdale, Arkansas. You're not in New York City, or you're not in Dallas, Texas, ordering unless it's a super, super unique situation or super high end world famous for some reason. You're not getting your excuse me, your dress shirts from a tailor in Springdale, Arkansas. You're getting them from a tailor in Dallas or in McKinney or wherever it is. So my point being is you needed that job replicated across each population center. So you needed thousands of tailors and millions of blacksmiths and millions of machinists. You needed all these people. But now you, me, some dude in China, we can all order the exact same thing from Amazon.
Yeah.
It has no limit to its scale. So let's just go back to shoes. If there were such a thing as cobbler slash, custom shoe people in every single shop and every single community, that is now wiped out by the Amazons or the Nordstrom, like whatever. The internet has killed that. So I don't know if capitalism can survive what I call hyperscaling, right? You have these massive, massive oligarchy type, huge conglomerates that, like Nestle owns like 400 different kinds of food companies. And they are the 800-pound gorilla, and there's no room for anyone else to kind of come into the conversation. So I guess what I'm getting at is if another 100,000 people tomorrow woke up in this town and said, I need shoes, they could all just go on Amazon. Amazon's turning around and source into Vietnam and it's done.
Mm.
It's not like there's opportunity for a cobbler, right? So it's a weird, we've reached an inflection point, I think, where we're going to have to reinvent some things because it's gotten so extreme. We're at the end of a Monopoly game, not the middle or the beginning. The middle of the beginning, it's great. It's everybody's game.
You know
Now
what?
it's
I
rigged.
I wonder if the pendulum is going to swing the other way now, because the pendulum swung over to like college degrees and everything. You go for almost any job interview, even entry level positions. Like a couple of the jobs that I got, running smaller companies. One of the first things that I would do is look at the hiring, practices, the HR, and almost always they for jobs that did not require a degree, they would say, associate degree, minimum of an associate's degree. And I'm like, why? You're narrowing your pool. And like, well, it shows that they're more trainable and all this. I'm like, I know plenty of guys that were in the military that are much more trainable. They're much more disciplined. They'll show up on time. They're a lot less headache. You're not going to have as many, HR issues, and I'm just like, get rid of that. The multiple interviews with multiple managers that take months and months and months before you hire somebody. Anybody worth hiring is going to be hired by then. So you're getting basically, the chaff, what's
That's
left
correct. I
by
saw just yesterday, 81% of recruiters admitted that, or companies that are recruiting admitted that a lot of the job
are
postings
fake.
on there are fake.
Yeah.
Just because they're trying to look like they're growing and they're
Yeah.
doing what they're supposed to do, but really, hey man, I'm up against it. I got to get going here,
All right.
but
No worries, man.
looking for the conversation as always.
Yeah, no, I freaking love it. But yeah, if any of you are interested, you're down in Texas, or you can actually help people outside of Texas, can't
I
you?
can help people across the country.
All
Yeah, they
right.
should go to wgplan.com. I think that's open. That's our brand new RIA me and Taylor built.
Here, hold
Let's
on.
see.
I'll go to it. WG Plan.
wgplan.com. Yeah.
Let's go to that
It's
real
up.
quick. Here we go. Let me take that down. I'll share this, and we'll end on this note. So here is. Let me slide this over so you can
So
see
we're
the
an
whole
RIA
thing.
firm that is a fiduciary, regulatory standard. So we have to do what's in our client's best interest. Not that we wouldn't anyway, but it's nice to know that there's that standard there behind it. And yeah, we help people with investments, retirement, risk management, all of it. Business owners, tax planning, all kind. Actually, a lot of tax. Not taxes. I don't do taxes, but I do a lot of tax planning and structures,
Yeah.
which is interesting because you get to feel like maybe you're winning the game a little bit against good old Uncle Sam sometimes.
Oh yeah. So those that don't know, Taylor and Jeff, they're both kind of housed in the same office there. Taylor, of course, is the estate planning, estate lawyer, wills, trusts, small business formation, things like that. Jeff, is more into investments, building your portfolio, your traditional finance. Me and Taylor have been introducing him to DeFi. He's dipped his toe in, so by all means, if you're interested in those types of services, Jeff's a great guy. I know him personally. I definitely vouch for him. So thanks again, Jeff.
Well,
And
look, I enjoyed it. We'll do this next Monday, huh?
absolutely.
All
Thanks to
right.
everybody out there on the arena that's watching and following us. We just started streaming on that, Pump.fun, all the X accounts, and on YouTube. So to the couple hundred people we got watching right now, till next time, Veteran Crypto out.